This episode has been brought to you by CompleteNutra.com, whole family nutrition.
One of the things that you believe deeply, and I can tell because you're speaking it really with authority right now, is the proof aspect of things. Like, I know a lot of people actually that are like, the Bible is a great story. It sounds great. It's imagination. And until you can, none of this actually becomes more than imagination until you can wrap your head around the accuracy of the Bible. I mean, how does that work? The accuracy of the Bible. How can we be sure that this stuff is historical?
Well, that would be a whole series of podcasts. I will say
Okay.
that I touch on that in my Theo Talk series, and I also give resources for that. But I think if you simply apply the same bibliographical tests to the New Testament, for example, that you apply to any other ancient work, no other ancient work in history, I guess that's redundant, ancient works in history, but no other ancient work even comes close to the veracity of the New Testament. The number of manuscripts we have allow us to test and see if and what things were changed all the way back to the very beginning. We can reconstruct the entire New Testament by something like, I think within the first century, or maybe by the year 150, I'd have to go back and look, just based on quotations in sermons of Christians. Other factors come in, like the Gospels, for example, were written much more early than we thought. They just found a copy of the Gospel of Mark in Egypt dating to AD 40. And it was shredded and being used as stuffing, which means it was very, very old. It was even older than that. Well, Jesus died and rose again in 30 AD. So that means in less than 10 years, a copy of one of the Gospels had become stuffing. And so that shows that the record itself goes all the way back to the very lifetime of Christ. And we see this over and over again. The Gospels themselves were written during a time when there were hundreds, thousands of eyewitnesses who could fact check everything. And not only that, but those who were writing the Gospels, because they were telling the truth about Jesus living, dying, and rising, their lives were in danger. They lost everything. There was no power in it.
Right.
And so those kinds of things converge together with other things like what's included in, for example, the Gospels. You have the failures of Peter. You have Jesus appearing to women after his resurrection first, which in that culture was a no-no. Women had no legal authority. They couldn't testify in court. The only reason you would include such a fact in a historical record is if it actually happened, because it would really hurt your case in that culture. So you start to see this convergence of factors that really begin to corroborate one another and build up the veracity of the New Testament.
Yeah, I remember you saying, so I can kind of see it visually. There's a map, and and it's like, is it thousands of miles of area where these documents were found? Like, is it over thousands of miles? Anyways, it's a long way.
Do you mean the geographic area across which they've been spread?
Yeah, so we've been finding all of these different versions of the gospel, then tracking them back. Well, the interesting part I'm making that you had made to me back in the day was all of these different writings of the gospel were all around this territory or region in very far distances where there was no like post office or anything. Like people had to walk these things everywhere.
No post office. Sure.
Yeah. And not only do they have to walk everything, where when they compare all of these documents from extremely different regions, they all say the same thing.
Well, no, actually they don't.
No?
But,
okay.
Well, they do, but you can the power of bibliographical evidence, bibliographical tests, you can see if and when and where they were changed. So if it says the same thing up until this point, then you have people like the Gnostic writers tweaking things, or you have other people, but you can tell that it was tweaked. And so you can see what the original was.
Yeah, that is interesting because the original Gospels are kind of almost written more like a historical text. Like this is what happened, like boom, 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 boom. They're not like flowery or like
No.
I mean, maybe some of the metaphors you might imagine are flowery, but the Gnostic Gospels are way more in the whole flowery poetry stuff.
Theosophical kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
right on.
And so the Gnostic Gospels, I mean, should those be, I mean, they're not part of the Bible. What do you think about those?
Yeah, so, they were written very late. They were written, 100 years after, probably actually, it depends on how you date it all, but, say 60 to 150 years after the fact. And when you read them, they're clearly written with a theological agenda. They're clearly theologized, and they just don't fit with the ancient Gospels. They're clearly being written from a perspective, and instead of just, hey, here's what happened. What do we do now? Like you said, the non-flowery, just kind of factual. I was here and I saw it. Here's what happened, and here's what we have to make of it.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for the Healthy and Family Show. Visit our website at healthyandfamily.com. That's healthyandfamily.com to see what all the other doctors, experts, and real moms have to say about keeping your whole family healthy. This episode has been brought to you by CompleteNutro.com, Whole Family Nutrition, and aired on the Goldstone Network. People, Planet, Future.